Hey, it's WTIC. You may have heard that that there is movement going on in the electorate, that the Democratic Party has become a party of affluent, college-educated people. And that has caused a migration of working-class voters who used to identify strongly with Democrats over to the Republican side. And that includes minority voters. And it's how much impact it has this election versus as it continues to grow remains to be seen. It could have big impact on this year's election. And here to talk about it is Isaac Willour. He is a student in college, a political science studying kind of guy, with a minor in psychology, which is a good idea because you have to figure out what motivates the professors, right, Isaac?
That is one of its many uses, yeah.
So what's your take on what is going on? Because people have been surprised by the impact that Donald Trump seemed to have on the black vote and Hispanic voters who voted for him in what was a shocker for Democrats in 2020. But I wonder if it is him alone or if it's a Republican Party thing across the board, and what other dynamics should we talk about?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Todd. I mean, let's be real about this. In terms of the way many Americans see this, we are facing down, the country collectively is facing down what could be very accurately dubbed the rematch from hell, two of the most polarizing and divisive candidates we've had in our country's history, at least for a long time, certainly during my lifetime, which is, to be fair, I'm 22, so it's not that much. But worth pointing out, this is what we are seeing right now is a battle between two candidates where each respective camp of their supporters is absolutely and utterly convinced that the other side, epitomized in the other candidate, does not care about them. Trump voters believe that Joe Biden does not care about them and is actively trying to make America worse for them, and the same can be said for Biden voters on the other side. The interesting thing that we're seeing right now is the Democratic National Convention, the Democratic Party, and Joe Biden himself and his administration have grown very, very accustomed to having the guaranteed votes of voters of color, minority voters, for decades. They have had this confidence. And I think they have gotten lazy. They have grown to take those voters for granted. And now, for a variety of reasons, which we can talk about, minority voters, voters of color, are turning towards the Trump camp because they believe that Trump cares about them more than Biden. And that is not a problem with Donald Trump, as much as DNC strategists might like to portray it that way. That is a problem with the Democratic Party. That is a problem with messaging. It is a problem of arrogance. And I think it's going to show up and be a larger factor in the election in favor, perhaps, of Donald Trump than many DNC strategists or Biden himself would like.
Yeah, is this a Trump thing, or does he have some particular magic, do you think, or is it about the positions of the parties? Because the Democrats have moved on to a different kind of primary demographic that they target, and it doesn't really include those underclass types who they used to, or who they depend on, but have always depended on so much, as you alluded to. You know, if you get 80 to 90% of black voters, which are 13% of the population or so, that makes the 13% minority into a major force in American politics.
Absolutely. It turns it into a voting bloc of significant impact. Yeah, so going back to the question about Trump, I mean, is there a certain magic about Trump? I mean, we could probably say that there is, but let's be real about that. That magic cuts both ways in just truly astonishing fashion. But I think a great deal of this, even in terms of minority voters who are turning towards Trump, can be placed solely in the lap of the Democratic National Convention, because the black opposition to Joe Biden since 2020, in the past 4 years, has grown from 8% in 2020 to 20% in the current electoral moment.
I'm sorry, what's that figure you're giving us represent?
It's grown from, the black opposition to Joe Biden has grown from 8% in 2020 to 20%.
Those are the total number of black registered voters who now want to vote for somebody else.
That's a survey poll of black voters saying that they want someone other than Joe Biden. Now,
wow.
the complicating dynamic to this is that doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to vote for Trump. Although there is some data to suggest there was a poll at the New York Times of all places, that said that I believe it's 22% of black voters in 6 key swing states would consider supporting Trump. If that ends up being the case, that is major electoral momentum. And also it is a reversal of the Republican Party's historic trajectory with the black vote and with voters of color more broadly.
So what they're saying is that their votes are in play, and just that fact, whether they actually vote for Trump or a Democrat or somebody else, that could be decided by what goes on during the campaign and who runs the best campaign. But the fact that they are available represents a seismic shift in terms of what their feeling is about the direction America is going in and who can lead it in the right direction. And what is manifesting to cause them to say that their votes are in play?
I mean, there's a lot of things we can look at here. I mean, specifically, if we're talking about Joe Biden, we can look at moments like the moment where he told radio host Charlemagne the God that if you have he told him this several years ago, I believe, if you have trouble deciding whether or not to vote for me or Trump, you ain't black, which is just the most profoundly insulting thing. It doesn't matter what president says that. That is so insulting and demeaning and commodifying to voters of color. Like, we're not pawns in a game, nor are we prizes to be won by hitting the right donation threshold, as the DNC is trying to do right now with Power of the People, which is $35 million attempting to do just that. What is happening right now, in my view, is that voters of color are realizing that they are realizing the agency that they have always had, and as a result of that, are leaving behind, an increasing number are leaving behind the loyalty they have had to a Democratic Party that, in their view, and I think quite justifiably so, and quite a justifiable view, they view the Democratic Party as having either sold them out or stopped caring about them altogether and taken them for granted. And that is a mistake that no political party can make, no matter what the opposition looks like.
So tell us more about this demographic, Isaac. We're talking to Isaac Willour. He's a student at Grove City College in Pennsylvania. He's majoring in political science, and you can tell he's smart on the topic. So you must go further with those numbers, if you have them on the top of your head, about the demographic of those black people. Are they young? Are they old? Are they men? Are they women? Are they what else can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so I can't delve too deeply into the specifics because I don't have the graph sitting in front of me, but I will say it is ostensibly part of a larger shift that we are seeing in which young men are beginning to become more conservative. There's extensive data on this. It's been a topic of many, many polls and opinion pieces in the news site as of recently. People are becoming more conservative, particularly young men. It's not particularly unsurprising, given the absolute narrative of doom and gloom that the Democratic Party has decided to pander to them. And to be fair, as a young male voter of color, the narrative that the Democratic National Convention and that Joe Biden panders to me is profoundly disturbing. There is no hope, there is no joy, there is no trust in the greatness of America, there's no belief in the greatness of America. It's simply, you must vote for us, because otherwise the Republican Party will do something racist to you. And I'm sorry, when I look at the Democratic Party of now, that is not happening. That is not what is going on.
What is not happening? Are you saying that Republicans aren't racists?
Not all. That's for dang sure. Listen, are there some? I'm sure. We could talk about that, but more to the point. What I see right now is that one political party, is specifically spending millions of dollars to target minority communities and get a specific voting behavior out of them by trumping up hyper-racialized propaganda and pushing a certain model of party loyalty based on no actual actions that have happened in the recent past.
Well, more the opposite. That
party doing that.
So there is this strong emotional bond that Democrats build with voters, and particularly minority voters, I think, by selling this victimhood model that I think you're alluding to, and making black voters feel like the only ones who will stand up for them and protect them from what has at times been a very cruel society. That's the Democrats. And why are certain voters immune to that pitch? Because it's worked really well for Democrats.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are a couple of reasons. And to be fair, there are a lot of legitimate pitches that the Democratic Party could make to minority voters. But now in 2024, it's an interesting ballgame. When you look around, as a voter of color, I look around and I think, what has the Democratic Party done for voters of color? We have widespread economic problems. We can have debates on the extent of those, but they exist. We have issues at the southern border that are endangering communities of Americans. We have strife and discord in the inner cities, $2 billion worth of damage from rioting in many of those same inner cities, as the Biden administration, in certain cases, gave ideological acquiescence to the people who committed that. What have they done for us? What have they done for us as voters of color recently? And
how about the education system in particular, which I think is probably the biggest curse that urban voters face, is they get the worst schools.
Yeah, and school choice is a very serious issue for voters of any color, but especially minority voters. This matters. And when Democrats oppose school choice, as many of them have, that's not just seeming like not caring. That is just straight up not caring.
Yeah, you make a good pitch on it. I like it. This is stuff I talk about a lot, and I have been for years, long before this particular dynamic with Trump and the peeling away of the respect that certain voters have had automatically, believing themselves to be bound to the Democrats, and the fact that is changing is an earth-shattering dynamic. How fast is it changing? What do you see from your sense of is it going to impact this election, or might it be the one after that before it really starts becoming a controlling problem for Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, some of it depends on one. I mean, I think Trump is a major part of this. Trump has, for better and for worse, an amazing ability to market himself to voters in a very specific way. So when he is no longer at the inevitable point where he is no longer in the electoral picture, that will probably change. And then I think there may be a sense of going back to the drawing board on some of this. But in terms of what I'm seeing right now, I think this is going to be a factor in 24. I think it absolutely is going to be a factor in 24. What we are seeing right now is the Democratic Party has decided that the tactics to go with is spend a bunch of money to try and gin up some kind of hysteria among voters of color, hope that works, and then rinse and repeat. And I do not believe that is I do not believe that is tenable long-term for the party. And two, I don't think that is the mark of a party worth moral consideration. Look, do I think that it's going to drive all minorities to the arms of Trump? No. Do I think Trump's a good guy? No. Do I think would be an amazing president? No. None of these things. I am deeply skeptical of the Democratic Party. I'm deeply skeptical of Trump and the Republican Party. I think I'm perfectly justified in having both of those opinions. But the Democratic Party needs to stop treating me and voters like me as shoo-ins or prizes to be won or taking us for granted. It's going to result in problems, and right now we're seeing just how bad those problems might get.
Isaac Willour, you're a good presenter of this topic. I love it because, as I mentioned, it's one I'm talking about all the time. So it's fun to hear somebody else do it. And you do a really good job. And I appreciate you taking the time to visit. And let's do it again, okay?
Absolutely, Todd. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, appreciate it. Isaac Willour, he's a student at Grove City College in Pennsylvania, political science major, and he's with an organization called Young Voices that is marketing some of these young people to us to get them out here. So I've had several on in the past few months, I guess, and perhaps you've heard other young people. It's just fun to get new voices, new perspectives, and new ways of articulating the issues and new ways of seeing them, because younger people just have a different feeling about our politics, and it's fun to hear. And it's particularly fun to hear this because it's upsetting what Democrats get away with, in my opinion, with regard to earning huge amounts of minority votes and then doing nothing to make lives better in those communities. It's kind of a shocking problem. So that's Isaac.